The flatline alarm screamed through the ICU at 2:47 a.m., and I watched the man I'd fallen in love with sprint to his wife's bedside. That sound, sharp, relentless, unforgiving, cut through everything. Through 3 months of stolen conversations in the dark. Through every moment his hand had almost touched mine. Through every night I'd convinced myself what we had wasn't real, wasn't crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But it was real. And she was waking up. And I was about to lose everything. The alarm pierced the quiet ICU like a scream. Room 308. My feet were moving before my brain fully processed what was happening. The hallway stretched endlessly in front of me, each step feeling like I was running through water. Through concrete. Through the wreckage of every choice that had led me here. I could see him through the glass, Vincent, sprinting from the visitor's lounge where he'd been waiting, coffee still in his hand, spilling across the floor as he ran. His face was a mixture of terror and hope and something else I couldn't name. Something that looked like goodbye. Because after 3 years of vigil, 3 years of unwavering devotion, 3 years of building his entire existence around the possibility of this moment, his wife was finally waking up. And the woman he'd been falling for in the dark would disappear like she'd never existed at all. Let me go back. Let me explain how I ended up here, in love with a man whose wife I'd been caring for, watching my heart shatter in real time while machines beat her back to life. My name is Claire Dawson, and I never wanted to be a night nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. Had the grades for it, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biology, volunteered at free clinics all through college, shadowed physicians, wrote a personal statement that made my pre-med advisor cry. I had the drive, the passion, the acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine with a partial scholarship that would have made it almost affordable. Almost. But then my mom got sick, stage 4 breast cancer with complications that turned our lives into an endless cycle of hospital bills and insurance denials. The kind of sick where treatment costs more than our house was worth. The kind of sick where you watch someone you love fade in increments while pharmaceutical companies and insurance adjusters argue about what her life is worth in dollars and cents. So I deferred medical school. Just for a year, I told myself. Just until we got through the worst of it. That was 4 years ago. I took the nursing job at Mercy General, working nights because the differential pay was higher, an extra $3 an hour that felt like a fortune when you were drowning. I slept during the day in fits and starts, my phone always within reach in case the hospital called about my mother. I watched my dreams get smaller and smaller until they fit in the space between my mother's chemo appointments, between bill payment deadlines, between the moments when I could still remember what it felt like to want something for myself. I was 28 and exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted in that bone-deep way where you forget what it feels like to want anything beyond the next paycheck. Where getting through the day feels like a victory. Where the idea of a future beyond survival seems like a luxury you can't even imagine anymore. Love felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Romance was something that happened to other people, people who had time and energy and lives that weren't held together by medical debt and sheer stubbornness. People who could afford to be vulnerable, to take risks, to open their hearts without calculating the cost. I hadn't been on a date in 2 years. Hadn't felt the flutter of attraction or the ache of longing or anything beyond the numbness that came from working 60-hour weeks and spending every spare moment in oncology waiting rooms. I'd forgotten I was capable of feeling anything at all. The ICU night shift was quiet, usually. Most patients were sedated or too sick to need much beyond monitoring. The hum of ventilators, the beep of heart monitors, the soft shuffle of nurses moving between rooms, it all created a kind of white noise that was almost peaceful. I'd do my rounds, check vitals, adjust 4 drips, document everything in the endless electronic charts that took up half my shift, and spend the rest of my time reading or studying for certifications I told myself would eventually matter. It was monotonous work. Repetitive. But there was comfort in that monotony. In knowing exactly what each night would bring. In not having to make decisions or feel emotions or do anything beyond following protocols and keeping people alive until morning. Then I got assigned to room 308. The assignment came during a particularly brutal stretch. My mother had just started a new round of chemo and wasn't responding well. I'd picked up extra shifts to cover an unexpected insurance denial, and I was running on maybe 3 hours of sleep in the past 2 days. I wasn't paying attention during the shift change briefing, just nodding along as the charge nurse handed out assignments. "Claire, you've got the long-termer in 308, she said, barely looking up from her clipboard. "Should be straightforward. Just keep an eye on vitals and follow the care plan." I took the chart without really looking at it. Another coma patient. Another body to keep alive. Another night of mechanical breathing and unchanging monitors. Then I got assigned to room 308. Isabel Chin. 32 years old. Coma patient. 3 years and counting since the car accident that nearly killed her. Except it wasn't an accident, everyone on the floor knew that, even if it wasn't in her chart. The official record said motor vehicle accident with catastrophic injuries. But the whispers in the break room told a different story. The way security was extra vigilant on this floor. The way certain visitors were screened more carefully. The way nobody ever asked too many questions about the well-dressed men who sometimes appeared in the waiting room. Assassination attempt. Car bomb meant for someone else. She'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right place depending on how you looked at it, because the bomb had been meant for her husband. Vincent Chin. Even I knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, though nobody said it too loud. He wasn't in the news much, too smart for that, too careful, but his presence hung over certain neighborhoods like weather. Protection here, development there, the kind of influence that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already understood the rules. My hands had actually trembled slightly when I read the name on the chart. Because caring for the wife of Vincent Chin meant being part of a story much bigger and more dangerous than anything I'd signed up for. "She's a long-termer," Sarah, the day nurse, told me during shift change, her voice dropping to that confidential tone people use when discussing patients who are more than just patients. "Husband visits every single day. 4 to midnight, like clockwork. He'll be gone before you start, but he leaves instructions. Specific ones. Don't deviate." "Instructions for what?" I asked, scanning the care plan. It was unusually detailed, far more than what was typically documented for a stable coma patient. Everything. What music to play. How to position her. What lotion to use on her hands. The exact angle of the bed. Which side to braid her hair on. Sarah's expression was complicated, part sympathy, part exasperation, part something that looked almost like envy. "He's..." She paused, searching for the word. "Devoted. Obsessively devoted." I looked at Isabel's chart more carefully now. 3 years in a coma. Traumatic brain injury with diffuse axonal injury. Stable but unresponsive. Glasgow Coma Scale consistently at 6, showing some reflex responses but no purposeful movement, no eye-opening, no verbal response. The notes were meticulous, every day documented, every change recorded, every small fluctuation in her condition tracked with the kind of attention that spoke of desperate hope. Every single day for 3 years. Over 1,000 days of documentation. Of someone refusing to give up. Of someone building a life around the possibility of a miracle. "Does he think she'll wake up?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. People didn't keep this kind of vigil if they'd accepted reality. Sarah's expression softened, and for a moment she looked less like the efficient, slightly jaded nurse I'd come to know and more like someone who'd witnessed something that touched her despite her professional distance. "He talks to her like she can hear him. Reads to her, poetry, novels, the newspaper. Plays her music. Brushes her hair every single visit. Brings fresh flowers twice a week." She shook her head, and I saw the shine of tears she was trying to hide. "It's heartbreaking, honestly. He's built his whole life around waiting for her to come back." Something in my chest tightened at that. Maybe because I understood devotion born of desperation. Maybe because I knew what it was like to build your entire existence around keeping someone alive, around hope that felt more like punishment than promise. What are the chances? I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. Even though I knew better than to get emotionally invested in patients, especially patients with connections to people like Vincent Chin. That she'll wake up, I mean. After 3 years. Sarah hesitated, and I saw her professional mask slip back into place. You've seen the scans. The damage was extensive. Most neurologists would say the chances are. She trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. Slim to none, I finished for her. Yeah. She gathered her things, preparing to leave. But don't tell him that. He doesn't want to hear statistics. He just wants her back. Has her condition changed at all? Any improvement? Nothing significant. Some minor fluctuations in response to stimuli, but nothing that indicates emerging consciousness. Dr. Patel reviews her case monthly, and it's always the same conclusion: persistent vegetative state with minimal chance of meaningful recovery. Sarah paused at the door. But he won't consider withdrawal of care. Won't even discuss it. And legally, he's her medical proxy, so we keep her alive. So we keep her alive, Sarah echoed. Follow his instructions exactly, Claire. He's very particular about her care, and he's not someone you want to upset. There was a warning in her tone that went beyond normal patient care protocols. A reminder that this wasn't just about medical treatment, it was about navigating something more complex and potentially dangerous. After Sarah left, I stood outside room 308 for a long moment before entering, trying to center myself professionally. Trying to remember that this was just another patient, just another shift, just another night of doing my job. But when I finally walked into that room, I knew immediately that nothing about this was going to be just another anything. The space felt different from every other ICU room I'd worked in. There were fresh flowers on the windowsill, peonies, pink and full and somehow still vibrant despite being in a hospital room. A photo on the bedside table showed a younger Isabel laughing, her head thrown back, joy captured in perfect clarity. She'd been beautiful, was still beautiful in that ethereal, untouchable way coma patients sometimes are. Someone had tucked a soft blanket around her, not the standard hospital blanket but something that looked handmade, knitted with care. Her hands were positioned carefully on top of the blanket, and I noticed someone had done her nails recently. Pale pink polish, perfectly applied. Classical music played softly from a small speaker on the windowsill, Debussy, I thought, though I wasn't entirely sure. Something gentle and melancholy and somehow perfect for the strange timelessness of this room. Everything about the space spoke of love. Of someone refusing to let go. Of someone trying desperately to keep her present, to keep her human, to keep her more than just a body in a bed. She looked peaceful. Beautiful, even, in that ethereal way coma patients sometimes do, untouched by time, suspended between life and death, aging more slowly than the rest of us because suffering and joy and living had been put on pause. I did my checks mechanically, falling into the routine that felt safe and professional. Vitals stable, heart rate steady at 68, blood pressure 118/76, oxygen saturation at 98%. For flowing correctly, the feeding tube secured properly, catheter draining clear urine. Everything exactly as it should be. I was adjusting her pillow, hospital protocol, making sure her head was positioned to prevent pressure sores, when I heard the door open behind me. My heart jumped into my throat before I'd even turned around. Because it was past midnight. Because Sarah said he'd be gone by now. Because I wasn't prepared to meet Vincent Chin, wasn't prepared for whatever this encounter might bring. She likes it higher. The pillow. She always complained hospital pillows were too flat. The voice was deep, quiet, carrying an exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. I spun around, my hands still on the pillow, my professional composure fracturing. Vincent Chin stood in the doorway, and everything Sarah had said suddenly made visceral, devastating sense. He was tall, maybe 6'2", lean in the way people are when they forget to eat regularly, when grief consumes calories faster than food can replace them. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that looked expensive in that understated way truly wealthy people dressed, the kind of quality you only noticed in the details. His hair was dark, slightly too long, messy in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it. But it was his eyes that stopped me, dark brown, almost black, carrying the kind of grief that had settled in so deep it became part of his foundation. This wasn't the dangerous crime boss I'd built up in my imagination. This was just a man. A heartbroken man who looked like he'd been surviving on hope and coffee for 3 years straight. "I'm sorry," I stammered, stepping back from the bed quickly, professionally, putting distance between myself and his wife. "I didn't know. Sarah said you left before night shift." "Usually do." He walked into the room with the ease of someone who'd made this journey 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times, his movements so practiced they required no thought. "Couldn't sleep tonight. Thought I'd come back." He moved to Isabel's side, his hand automatically reaching for hers. The gesture was so natural, so ingrained, so heartbreakingly intimate that I had to look away. This was their space, their ritual, and I was intruding on something sacred. "I'm Claire," I said, unsure what else to say, desperately trying to establish some kind of professional boundary. "The new night nurse." "Vincent." He didn't look at me, his attention fixed entirely on his wife, his thumb moving in small circles over her knuckles in a gesture that looked like prayer. "She does like the pillow higher. And the blanket needs to be tucked on her left side, she always kicked it off on the right when she slept." Drove me crazy. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, there and gone. I'd wake up freezing because she'd stolen all the covers. The present tense. He still talked about her in the present tense, like she was just sleeping, like she'd wake up any moment and resume the life they'd been building together. "Of course. I'll remember," I said softly, making a mental note. "Higher pillow. Left side tucked." It was such a small thing, such an intimate detail, the kind of knowledge that came from sharing a bed with someone, from knowing their habits and preferences in that unconscious way that only came from deep familiarity. She liked lavender lotion. "Not the hospital stuff, it's too clinical. There's a bottle in the top drawer." He finally glanced at me, and something in his expression was almost apologetic, like he knew he was being demanding but couldn't help himself. "I know I'm particular about her care. I don't mean to be difficult." "You're not difficult. You love her." The words came out before I could stop them. Too personal. Too presumptuous. Too far outside the bounds of professional nurse-patient-family interaction. But his expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features, followed by something that looked like relief. Like someone had finally understood. Like he'd been waiting 3 years for someone to see past the surface to what this really was. "Yeah," he said quietly, his voice roughening with emotion. "I do." And in that moment, standing in that flower-filled room with machines breathing for a woman who couldn't breathe for herself, watching a man hold his wife's hand like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth, I understood exactly what Sarah had meant. This wasn't just devotion. This was love that had nowhere to go, no way to be received, no possibility of reciprocation. This was love that had turned into vigil, into waiting, into hope that felt more like torture than comfort. This was heartbreak that wouldn't end because the story wouldn't end. Just suspended, indefinitely, in the space between life and death. And I had no idea that in 3 months, I'd understand that feeling from the inside. That first night, I entered room 308 expecting the usual, a patient I'd never really know, just another body I'd keep alive until morning shift arrived. But the room felt different. There were fresh flowers on the windowsill, peonies, pink and full. A photo on the bedside table showed a younger Isabel laughing, her head thrown back, joy captured in perfect clarity. Someone had tucked a soft blanket around her, positioned her hands carefully on top of it. Classical music played softly from a speaker, Debussy, I thought, though I wasn't sure. She looked peaceful. beautiful, even, in that ethereal way coma patients sometimes do, untouched by time, suspended between life and death. I did my checks mechanically. Vitals stable. For flowing correctly. Feeding tubes secured. Everything exactly as it should be. I was adjusting her pillow when I heard the door open behind me. She likes it higher. The pillow. She always complained hospital pillows were too flat. I spun around, my heart jumping into my throat. Vincent Chen stood in the doorway, and everything Sarah said suddenly made visceral sense. He was tall, lean, wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that looked expensive in that understated way truly wealthy people dressed. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. But it was his eyes that stopped me, dark, exhausted, carrying the kind of grief that had settled in so deep it became part of his foundation. "I'm sorry," I stammered, stepping back from the bed. "I didn't know. Sarah said you left before night shift." "Usually do." He walked into the room with the ease of someone who'd made this journey 1,000 times. "Couldn't sleep tonight. Thought I'd come back." He moved to Isabel's side, his hand automatically reaching for hers. The gesture was so natural, so ingrained, that it clearly required no thought. "I'm Claire," I said, unsure what else to say. "The new night nurse." "Vincent." He didn't look at me, his attention fixed on his wife. "She does like the pillow higher. And the blanket needs to be tucked on her left side, she always kicked it off on the right." "Of course. I'll remember." She liked lavender lotion. "Not the hospital stuff, it's too clinical. There's a bottle in the top drawer." He finally glanced at me, and something in his expression was almost apologetic. "I know I'm particular about her care. I don't mean to be difficult." "You're not difficult. You love her." The words came out before I could stop them. Too personal. Too presumptuous. But his expression shifted, surprise, maybe, or recognition that someone finally understood. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." He stayed for an hour that night. I continued my rounds, but I was hyper-aware of his presence. Of the way he read to her, poetry, I realized, listening from the hallway. Of how he brushed her hair with infinite gentleness. Of the way he talked to her about his day, his voice low and intimate, like they were alone. "The construction on 5th is finally done," he said. "You'd be so relieved. You always hated that detour. And I moved the meeting with the contractors to Tuesday. I know you said Tuesdays were better for those kinds of conversations. You were right about Davis, by the way. He tried to renegotiate. I shut it down, just like you would have. He talked to her like she was there. Like she was his partner, his advisor, his person. And something in my chest ached watching it. When he finally left, he stopped at the nurse's station where I was charting. "Thank you," he said. "For understanding." Of course. Most people think I'm crazy. Talking to someone who can't respond. I don't think you're crazy. I think you're grieving. His jaw tightened. Can't grieve someone who's still alive. Maybe grief isn't just about death. Maybe it's about loss, even when the person is right in front of you. He stared at me for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his features. Then he nodded once and left. I didn't see him again for 2 weeks. He kept his schedule, gone before I arrived. But his presence remained in that room. In the fresh flowers. In the carefully chosen music. In every detail that spoke of a love that refused to let go. I found myself thinking about him more than I should. About what it meant to love someone so completely that you'd build your entire life around the shell of who they used to be. About the kind of devotion that didn't require reciprocation. About how lonely that must be. The second time I saw Vincent was different. It was a Thursday night, nearly 1 a.m., and I was in room 308 doing my routine checks when he appeared in the doorway. He looked worse than before, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, and exhaustion that went beyond physical. "Sorry," he said. "I know it's late." "It's fine. She's stable." He nodded but didn't move. Just stood there, staring at his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Bad night?" I asked softly. "Bad year." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But yes. Tonight especially." "Want to talk about it?" I don't know why I asked. It wasn't my job. Wasn't my place. But something about the way he stood there, so completely alone despite being surrounded by an empire, made the words spill out. He looked at me, surprised. "You have time?" "It's the night shift. Time is all I have." So he talked. Not about whatever business had gone wrong, he was careful about that, never crossing into territory that might implicate either of us. But he talked about the weight of decisions. About being responsible for too many people. About how every choice rippled outward in ways you couldn't control. She was good at this, he said, looking at Isabel. The impossible decisions. She'd see angles I'd miss. She'd find the solution that satisfied everyone, or at least the solution that did the least damage. His voice roughened. I miss having someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who knows me well enough to call me on my bullshit. You don't have anyone? I have people who work for me. People who fear me. People who want things from me. But someone who actually knows me? Who sees past the reputation to the person underneath? He shook his head. That died when she went into this coma. Maybe not died. Maybe just sleeping. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. Or just two lonely people seeing their isolation reflected back. That night became a pattern. Vincent started showing up 2-3 times a week during my shift. He'd sit with Isabel, talk to her, care for her with that same devoted attention. But afterward, he'd linger. We'd talk in the hallway, in the break room, sometimes in Isabel's room with her unconscious presence between us like a chaperone. We talked about everything and nothing. About my mother's illness, and how medical debt had swallowed my dreams. About his childhood in the city, growing up in a world where violence was currency. About books and music and the strange intimacy of 3 a.m. conversations when the rest of the world was sleeping. Why nursing? He asked one night. It was practical. Stable income, good benefits, shorter schooling than being a doctor. I paused. That sounds mercenary. It sounds smart. It sounds like giving up. Or like doing what needs to be done for the people you love. That's not giving up. That's sacrifice. The way he said it, with such certainty, made something in my chest tighten. Because he understood. He understood making choices that hurt, that cost you pieces of yourself, because someone else needed you to. What about you? I asked. Did you choose this life, or did it choose you? His expression darkened. Little bit of both. My father built the foundation. I inherited the structure. Could I walk away? Maybe. But then what happens to everyone who depends on that structure staying stable? So you stay. So I stay. We were silent for a moment, the weight of our respective cages hanging between us. Do you ever wonder what life would be like if we'd made different choices? I asked. Every single day. The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. Because he wasn't just talking about his business. He was talking about Isabel. About the accident. About the 3 years of suspended animation that had become his existence. And maybe, possibly, he was talking about me too. The shift happened so gradually I didn't notice it at first. The way my heart would speed up when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. The way I'd find excuses to be in room 308 when I knew you might show up. The way his smile, rare and small and absolutely genuine, could improve my entire night. I told myself it wasn't attraction. It was just connection. Just two lonely people finding comfort in unexpected friendship. But I was lying to myself. I started noticing details. The way his hands moved when he talked, expressive and careful. The way his voice softened when he said my name. The way he'd bring coffee, always with cream, 2 sugars, exactly how I liked it even though I'd only mentioned it once. You remembered, I said one night, accepting the cup. I remember everything you tell me. The way he said it, direct, honest, weighted with meaning, made my hands shake slightly. Because that wasn't friendship. That was something else. Something dangerous. Vincent. I know. He stepped back, putting distance between us. I know what this looks like. What this is becoming. Nothing's becoming anything. But my voice lacked conviction. Claire. Just my name, but the way he said it made my heart stutter. I'm not blind. And I'm not stupid. I know what I feel when you walk into a room. I know that I look forward to these nights more than anything else in my life right now. I know that's wrong. I know I should stop coming. Then why don't you? Because you're the only person who makes me feel human. The only person who doesn't look at me and see a monster or a commodity or a threat. His voice roughened with emotion. You see me, Claire. Just me. Do you know how rare that is? I did know. Because I felt the same way. In a life that had become nothing but obligation and exhaustion, he was the one thing that felt like choice. Like possibility. We can't, I whispered. I know. Your wife is 20 feet away. I know. This is wrong on every possible level. I know. He moved closer, and I should have stepped back, but I couldn't. But I can't stay away from you. I've tried. God, Claire, I've tried. But every night I tell myself I won't come back, and every night I end up here anyway. She could wake up. My voice cracked. Any day, she could wake up, and what then? What are we doing, Vincent? What are we building that isn't going to destroy everyone involved? I don't know. The honesty in his voice was devastating. I don't have answers. I just know that when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be alive. To want something. To feel something other than grief and guilt and crushing responsibility. That's not fair to her. None of this is fair to her. His voice rose, then dropped immediately, remembering where we were. She's trapped in a body that won't respond. I'm trapped in a life that won't move forward. We're both in prison, Claire. Different kinds, but prison nonetheless. Tears burned my eyes. And what am I? Your escape? You're my reminder that there's still beauty in the world. That not everything is darkness and violence and waiting. He lifted his hand like he might touch my face, then stopped himself. You're my reminder that I'm still capable of feeling something other than pain. This can't go anywhere. I know. We can't, there's no future here. Even if she never wakes up, we can't. The guilt alone would destroy us. I know. Then what are we doing? He looked at me with such raw honesty it felt like being seen through. I think we're drowning. And maybe we're just grabbing onto each other because we're both going under. The truth of that statement hung between us. Two people in impossible situations, finding comfort in each other's company, pretending the precipice we were standing on wasn't crumbling under our feet. I should stop coming during your shifts, he said finally. You should. I won't. I know. We stood there in the dim hallway, the space between us charged with everything we weren't saying. Everything we couldn't say. Then he left, and I stood there trembling, knowing we'd just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The weeks that followed were exquisite torture. Vincent kept coming. We kept talking. The pull between us kept growing stronger, magnetic, and inevitable. But we didn't touch. We maintained that boundary like it was the only thing keeping us tethered to morality. He told me about Isabel, not just the woman in the bed, but the person she'd been. Smart, fierce, with a laugh that could light up entire rooms. She'd been an architect, designing buildings that made the city more human, as Vincent described it. She'd been his partner in every sense, in business, in life, in the careful navigation of a world that was equal parts legitimate and not. She knew what I was when she married me, he said one night. Never asked me to be different. Just asked me to be honest. And were you? Always. Even when the truth was ugly. He looked at his wife, something complex crossing his expression. She deserved that honesty. She deserves better than what I'm doing now. What are you doing now? Falling for someone else while she sleeps. Emotionally cheating on a woman who can't even defend herself or fight for me or tell me to get the hell away from the night nurse. The bluntness of it stole my breath. Because he'd said it. Put it into words. Made it real. Vincent. Don't. He closed his eyes. Don't tell me it's okay. Don't rationalize it. It's not okay. I'm betraying her, and I know it, and I'm still doing it anyway because I'm selfish and weak and human. He looked at me, pain etched in every line of his face. You're human, I repeated. You're lonely and grieving and trying to survive an impossible situation. That doesn't make you a monster. Doesn't make me a good man either. Maybe there's no such thing as a good man. Maybe there's just men trying to do the best they can in terrible circumstances. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's a generous interpretation. Or a realistic one. We lapsed into silence. Isabel's ventilator clicked rhythmically. Music played softly, Chopin tonight. What would you do? Vincent asked suddenly. If you were me. If you'd been waiting 3 years for someone to wake up. If you'd put your entire life on hold. If you'd been faithful and devoted and present every single day. And then someone walked into your life who made you feel alive again. What would you do? The question felt like a test. Like a trap. Like a cry for help. I don't know, I admitted. I want to say I'd be strong enough to walk away. That I'd honor the commitment I'd made. But honestly, I don't know if I'm that good of a person. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me it's okay to feel this. I want permission to be selfish. I want someone to tell me I've earned the right to happiness after 3 years of purgatory. His voice cracked. But I also want you to tell me I'm wrong. That I'm betraying everything I believe in. That I should walk away before this goes any further. I can't give you permission, Vincent. That's not my place. Then what is your place? The question hung between us, loaded and dangerous. I don't know, I whispered. I'm trying to figure that out. He moved closer then, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. Close enough that I could see the exhaustion and desire and conflict warring in his expression. Tell me to leave, he said softly. Tell me to stop coming. Tell me you don't feel this too. But I couldn't. Because I did feel it. Felt it with every accelerated heartbeat, every caught breath, every moment I looked forward to seeing him. I can't, I admitted. Why not? Because I'm selfish too. Because these nights with you are the only thing that makes my life feel like more than survival. Because, I stopped myself before I said too much. Because what? Because I'm falling for you too, and I hate myself for it. The confession hung between us like smoke. Then his hand lifted, fingertips barely grazing my cheek. The touch lasted half a second, not even a full breath, but it burned through me like electricity. He pulled back immediately, horror crossing his face. I'm sorry. God, Claire, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Go, I said, my voice shaking. Please just go. He left. And I stood there in the hallway, my cheek still burning from that ghost of a touch, hating myself and wanting him in equal measure. I tried to get reassigned. Told the charge nurse I needed a different floor, different patients, different anything. Room 308 specifically requested you, she said. Mr. Chin called. Said his wife's condition has been stable under your care and he'd prefer continuity. Of course he did. Because he couldn't stay away any more than I could. So I stayed in room 308. Kept caring for Isabel with the same attention and gentleness I'd always shown her. Kept talking to her sometimes, telling her about my day, about my mother, about everything except the massive betrayal happening right under her unconscious nose. I'm sorry, I whispered to her one night when I was alone with her. I'm so sorry. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Better than what he and I are doing. But Isabel slept on, her chest rising and falling with mechanical precision, her face peaceful and untroubled. And Vincent kept coming. We didn't talk about what had happened. Didn't acknowledge the line we'd almost crossed. We just existed in this strange liminal space, not quite friends, not quite something more, trapped in the gravity of something we both knew was wrong but couldn't resist. My mother asked about you, I told him one night, desperate for normal conversation. What did you tell her? That I have a friend who understands what it's like to have someone you love trapped between life and death. Is that what we are? Friends? I don't know what we are. Neither do I. He was quiet for a moment. How is she? Your mother. Stable. The new treatment is working. We might actually make it through this without losing everything. That's good. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the only family I have left. The only person who, I stopped, realizing what I'd almost said. The only person who what? The only person who sees me as more than just the sum of my mistakes and debts and obligations. Vincent's expression softened. I see you that way too. Do you? Or do you just see someone who makes you feel less guilty about wanting to move on? The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't take them back. He flinched like I'd struck him. Is that what you think? I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know if what we have is real or if we're just two lonely people using each other as an escape. It's real, Claire. Whatever else it is, it's real. Then what do we do with it? Where does this go? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's the only answer I have. His voice rose, then fell. You think I want this? You think I want to be the guy who falls for someone else while his wife is in a coma? I'm not that person. I never thought I'd be that person. But here I am, and I can't, he ran his hands through his hair. I can't stop feeling what I feel. Then maybe you need to try harder. Would that make you happy? If I stopped coming? If I walked out of your life and never came back? The question felt like a knife. Because the answer was no. The answer was that I'd be devastated. That these nights with him had become the only thing I looked forward to. That I'd started measuring my life in shifts where I might see him. It would make things easier, I said instead. Easier isn't the same as better. Maybe it should be. We stood there, the weight of impossible choices crushing us both. Tell me what you want, Vincent said finally. Not what's right or moral or appropriate. Tell me what you actually want. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. So tell me. What do you want? The truth pushed at my throat, desperate to escape. But saying it would make it real. Would cross the final line we'd been dancing around for months. My voice broke. I want you. I want late nights and real conversations and someone who sees me. I want to matter to someone the way Isabel matters to you. I want to be chosen, not because I'm convenient or available, but because you can't imagine your life without me in it. Vincent's breath caught. But I can't have that, I continued. Because she's here. Because you're married. Because even if she never wakes up, we'd both know what we did. We'd know we built something on top of her unconscious body. And that would poison everything, wouldn't it? Every moment would be tainted by guilt. Yes, he said simply. It would. So where does that leave us? In purgatory. Same place we've been. The honesty of it hurt more than lies would have. I can't do this anymore, I whispered. I can't keep pretending this is sustainable. I can't keep caring for your wife while falling for you. It's destroying me. Then I'll stop coming. Will you? He looked at me with such raw desperation that my heart cracked. I'll try. He tried. For 3 weeks, Vincent didn't show up during my shifts. I told myself it was better this way. Cleaner. Easier. But the nights felt empty. The ICU felt colder. Every shift stretched endlessly, marked only by routine checks and mechanical breathing and the absence of the one person who'd made this job feel like more than obligation. I missed him. God, I missed him so much it physically hurt. And I hated myself for it. Hated that I'd become the kind of person who could fall for a married man. Who could betray an unconscious woman? Who could be so desperate for connection that I'd sacrifice every principle I thought I had? My mother noticed the change. You look sad, she said during one of my visits. I'm just tired. You're always tired. This is different. She studied me with the kind of perception only mothers have. This is heartbreak. I'm not. Claire. I know my daughter. What happened? So I told her. Not everything, but enough. About Vincent and Isabel and the impossible situation I'd found myself in. Do you love him? She asked when I finished. I don't know. Maybe. Yes. I don't know. Does he love you? I think so. But it doesn't matter. He's married. She could wake up tomorrow, and where would that leave me? My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm going to tell you something your grandmother told me once. Love isn't always about choosing between right and wrong. Sometimes it's about choosing between two wrongs and trying to do the least damage. That's not helpful. It's not meant to be helpful. It's meant to be honest. She squeezed my hand. You're not a bad person for having feelings. You're human. The question is what you do with those feelings. I'm trying to do nothing with them. Is that working? No. Then maybe you need to make a different choice. But I didn't know what choice to make. Didn't know how to navigate a situation where every option felt like betrayal. The flatline alarm screamed through the ICU at 2:47 a.m., and I watched the man I'd fallen in love with sprint to his wife's bedside. Because she was awake, except it wasn't a flatline. It was her heart rate spiking. It was her monitors going haywire. It was activity where there had been nothing but steady, mechanical consistency for 3 years. It was Isabel waking up. I stood frozen in the doorway as Vincent reached for her hand, as her fingers that hadn't moved in 3 years, twitched in his. Isabel, he breathed. Isabel, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. Once. Twice. Then opened. The room exploded with activity. Dr. Patel rushing in. Other nurses crowding around. Everyone shouting instructions, checking pupils, adjusting monitors. And Vincent, standing there with his wife's hand in his, tears streaming down his face, looking at her like she was a miracle and a ghost all at once. Our eyes met across the chaos. In his expression, I saw everything. Joy. Relief. Guilt. Grief. The death of whatever we'd been building. And there was no good choice anymore. Only betrayal in every direction. I requested immediate reassignment. The charge nurse tried to argue continuity of care, patient preference, my exemplary record, but I didn't care. I couldn't be in that room anymore. Couldn't watch Vincent with his wife. Couldn't be the other woman in a story that finally had its happy ending. They moved me to the cardiac unit. Different floor. Different patients. Different everything. I threw myself into work. Picked up extra shifts. Volunteered for the hardest cases. Anything to keep my mind occupied and my heart from shattering completely. 2 weeks passed. I didn't see Vincent. Didn't hear from him. The grapevine said Isabel was recovering well, physical therapy, speech therapy, neurological testing all showing positive results. She'd been given a miracle, and she was fighting to reclaim her life. I should have been happy for them. Should have felt relief that the moral quicksand I'd been trapped in had finally solidified into something clear. Instead, I just felt empty. Then one night, 3 weeks after Isabel woke up, I was leaving my shift when I saw him in the parking lot. Vincent, leaning against his car, looking like he'd aged a decade. Claire. My feet stopped moving. My heart started racing. You shouldn't be here. I know. Your wife is at home. She's recovering. She's going to be okay. His voice cracked. She's going to be okay. Then why are you here? Because I need to talk to you. Need to explain. There's nothing to explain. She woke up. You're together. That's how it should be. Is it? He pushed off the car, and I saw the devastation in his eyes. Because I'm sleeping next to her every night and dreaming about you. I'm holding her hand and wishing it was yours. I'm listening to her talk about rebuilding our life, and all I can think about is that I've already built something else. With someone else. Vincent, stop. She asked about you. About the night nurse who took such good care of her. She wants to thank you. And I had to stand there and smile and say you were wonderful, and all I could think was that I'm the worst person alive because part of me wishes she hadn't woken up. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. He stepped closer, and I saw tears on his face. I love her, Claire. I do. 3 years of waiting for her, and she's back, and I should be grateful and happy but I can't stop thinking about you. About what we had. About what we could have been if circumstances were different. But they're not different. She's awake. You're married. There's no room for me in this story. I know. His voice broke. I know, and it's killing me. We stood there in the parking lot, the space between us impossible to cross. What do you want from me? I asked. Absolution? Permission? What? I want you to tell me it meant something. That I didn't imagine it. That what we had was real. It was real. Tears streamed down my face now. It was real, and it was wrong, and it's over. You have to go home to your wife, Vincent. You have to choose her. Because if you don't, you'll destroy both of us with guilt. And if I choose her? Then you live with it. You make your marriage work. You build the life she woke up expecting to have. And you forget about the night nurse who was only ever meant to be a detour. I'll never forget you. Then learn to live with remembering. He reached for me then, not to touch, but like he wanted to. Like every cell in his body was fighting the impulse. I'm sorry, he whispered. For all of it. For pulling you into this. For making you care. For not being strong enough to stay away when I should have. I'm sorry too. For letting myself fall. For wanting something that was never mine to want. We stood there, two people saying goodbye to something that never quite existed and yet felt more real than anything else in our lives. Then Vincent turned and walked away. I watched him go, my heart breaking in slow motion, knowing I'd done the right thing and hating every second of it. 6 months later, my mother went into remission. The relief was overwhelming. The debt was still crushing, but manageable now. And for the first time in years, I could think about my own life beyond survival. I applied to med school again. Got accepted. Gave my notice at the hospital. On my last day, I walked past the ICU one final time. Room 308 was empty now. Isabel had been discharged months ago. But I stopped in the doorway anyway, remembering. She asks about you sometimes. I spun around to find Vincent standing in the hallway. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him. Less haunted. More settled. Like someone who'd made peace with his choices. How is she? I asked. Good. Really good. She's back at work part-time.